Hi and welcome to my channel, Budget Audio Review. Now today we're going back to this NAD 7020 receiver. Got that legendary NAD 3020 amplifier, part of the makeup of this unit with a tuner built in. Now in a video prior to this, we changed the power supply capacitors, getting rid of a little bit of hum that was in the audio. You could hear it in the audio, obviously on with nothing playing. Turn the volume up, you could hear that little bit of humming. And also had a little bit of crackling we got rid of as well. Now whether changing them capacitors actually did that, because we had to take out, I had to take out a board, the edge connectors may have been a bit dirty. Replacing it back in there and cleaning up them edge connectors may well have cleared up the crackling noise. I don't know. If you want to go and have a little look at that video, make up your own mind, I'll leave a link at the top. But if you've been following the series, as soon as we turn this on with this power switch, it makes that horrible noise, that kind of crackling, that harking noise. It's like if you're trying to tune in a radio station and you're not getting any reception. Let's play a video of me when I actually first got this receiver and what noise it was actually making. Okay, so you could hear that's quite noisy, something you don't want to put up with really, and it's not doing your amplifier any good neither. So you may have your amplifier receiver just does it very quickly, or you may have one that goes on even longer. Now the longer it goes on, the worse it is obviously, but even that short burst, and you may have one that just goes zzz and comes in, something like that. Or you may have one a bit like a Marantz video I did. I'll just put a link at the top, it may be interesting, that video, where the lights on display kind of flicker a little bit, giving you an indication that something's not quite right when connecting that main switch. When it goes in, it's not quite connected. Now on your receiver or amplifier, you may have a rotary one, so this is not going to kind of cover that, shall we say, but still a good idea to change it if it is a rotary one. This is a push switch, a latching switch, a push. You push it in, it holds itself in position, and you push it out and it pings back out. So that's the kind of switch in this particular receiver here. It's in quite a few Marantz's, Sanios, and obviously NAD and other bits and pieces. They use this switch. What's a little bit different about this switch, it just isn't a two-pole switch. When I say a two-pole, we've got two poles, one for the neutral, one for the live, and each pole connects. As you push the switch in, both poles connect, making the circuit. Where some of them may just be a one pole, where just the live connects up, the neutral's already connected, and it just connects up the live. This is a two-pole switch with another little switch at the bottom. So if I just put a picture of it up on the screen now, as you can see the top part, the white part there, it's the main switch. And that main switch will accommodate 120 volts, 240 volts, probably 4 amps, something like that anyway. So quite a reasonable amount of current and a reasonable amount of voltage. Now the bottom part of the switch is kind of attached to it at the bottom there. It's just a little kind of another two-pole switch. And this particular poles here, let's try and explain this a little bit more. Let's go back to the bottom one first. This bottom one is a two-pole switch, but it's for low voltages, low current, low voltages. You can see it's quite a bit smaller, so it's low voltages, low current. But what's the difference here also in this switch? If you go back up to the top one, you can see it's just got 4 connections. The 2 red ones at the bottom with the arrows there, they've been cut off. On some switches they will be there still, but on this particular switch they've cut them off. So in other words, when it's pushed in, if I just show you now, if I push that switch in, these 2 top contacts would make, so they go short circuit kind of thing. So they make, so if you had something connected, it would turn on. So these 2 will connect, and these 2 here will connect. Then push it out, they will disconnect. But if this was actually, a little, what do they call it? A little connection was poking out the top here, which has been cut off on purpose by the looks of it. If they were there, then them 2 would connect. The bottom 2 would connect. So when it's in the push in position, the top 2 connect. When it's in the push out, the bottom 2 would connect, but like I say, they're missing. So that's done on purpose on this switch, but you would have some where then bottom 2 would be there kind of thing. So you don't want to connect it there, because it'd be on when the switch is kind of pushed out, and when you push it in, the amplifier receiver will be off. So you've got to make sure you do it on the right poles, the right connections for them poles. But going back to this bottom one, as you can see, this here, I'll just do a close up there so you can see, it's actually got 6 connections on it, 3 each side. So that would be the case scenario which I've just said now. So when you push it in, the top 2 would be connected on both sides. And when you push it out, so it's actually in the off position, so to speak, the bottom 2 would be connected on each side, like this diagram is hopefully showing on the screen. So that's the kind of connection you're getting. So obviously, this is the switch we need to replace in this receiver. We need to get this particular switch, or in your amplifier it's got this particular switch. Now like I said, I had trouble getting this, but lo and behold, As soon as I've done this video, as soon as I put the switch in and everything else, I went on eBay today, and you know down below you're looking at stuff and it says recommended, you know, you may have missed this kind of thing. And one of these switches come up, well, something very, very similar. I'll show you a picture there. This is a Marantz one from Marantz, but it's exactly the same kind of switch. It'll fit in this receiver. It's got the connections at the top, the 2 poles at the top, and it's got that little switch at the bottom. So we could quite easily use this switch, but unfortunately, I didn't see that at the time making this video and putting the new switch in this receiver. I didn't see that. So we're going to do this video, we're going to carry on. So, you know, if you can get hold of that switch, that's the switch to go for. You know, it's going to be a nice easy job, just disconnect the wires and reconnect the wires. You're going to be up and running. But if you can't get that switch, or you're like me, didn't see it, and got another switch laying about, or you may be able to buy one, just a normal 2-pole switch that hasn't got this little bottom bit on the bottom. It's just basically a 2-pole switch like this one on the screen now. These are about £5 or £6 here in the UK, $7 or $8, something like that. So not expensive, they're a lot less expensive than this switch anyway, especially when you've got to import them in maybe, and maybe pay some import duty as well. So you can use this switch, but we're going to do a little bit of bodgery, shall we say. I don't like using that word. It ain't so much a bodge, it works, you know what I mean, but it's not as it was intended to do. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to fit that switch instead of this switch. Now, the only problem with that is obviously 2 wires went to this switch here at the bottom. 2 little wires went to this switch. So there's no way of connecting them up here without blowing everything up and everything else. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to, now that switch I've used is actually in the machine. I did take some pictures of me doing it. I soldered it in, and God knows what happened to the pictures because they seem to have disappeared. But you will see it when we go, it'll be installed in there. You can see it's in there, just not going to see the actual switch. But it's very, very similar to this switch here, which I showed you earlier. It's very, very similar, just a normal 2-pole switch. Like I say, we're not going to connect these wires up to the switch at all. We're actually going to disconnect them from the circuit completely. I'm going to go through how I did that, what they actually do as well, and how this amplifier still will work without them 2 wires being connected. Though we could say it's a little bit of a bodge, a little bit of tinkering around, you know what I mean, not, you know, as it should have actually been, but it still works and still does its job. So let's get on with that. Okay, I'm going to talk through this fairly slowly because I'm putting up some pictures as well, so we've got more of an idea rather than watching the pictures through a video. Actually, I have some stills as well. But first of all, we've got to take this switch off that we're going to replace. By the wrong switch, but it's still going to do the job. We're not putting the exact same switch in. If it were, it's going to be fairly straightforward. We're just going to take it out, swap the new one over, put the wires where they were, and we're all done. But we're going to do a little bit different this time. So first of all, I'm just going to take this switch out. So there you can see the switch there, and the 2 red arrows show you the 2 screws that need undoing. This is it from the top. It's still in there. I haven't undone it yet, but here's the switch here. So there you go. I've undone the 2 screws, and we pulled the switch up a little bit. We've got 2 wires here, a black and a white wire, as you can see there towards the bottom. This is going to the board, and we're going to not use these after we've installed my other switch, just a 2-pole switch. We're not going to use them. I'm going to show you what I did to get around them. But there you go. So it's out at the moment, so just be careful. You may want to take a picture of what colour wires go where, so you know exactly where they are, where the capacitors are in relation to the switch and the contacts, and maybe where the other end of these wires are going onto the circuit board, or where else in the amplifier they're going, just in case you tuck this switch and you pull one of them wires out. I mean, you shouldn't do that. They should be soldered in there nice and tight, but you never know, they may have been a little bit loose or something, and one may just suddenly come undone. It's sod's law. You haven't taken a picture, and you may be thinking, where the hell does this go? So maybe just a good idea of doing that. There's another picture of the switch, and this is this black and white wire down here, this little bottom bit of the switch that we haven't got on our replacement switch. This part's missing. We've got the top bit, but the bottom bit's missing. So as I said, mark it down, a little bit of paper saying where it's all going, and there you can say brown, yellow, blue and orange, and my little white and black lead goes here, and this is looking top down on the contacts of the switch. This is the switch out, still got my capacitors connected still, so we're going to have to undo them to put them on my new switch. They're usually wound round a few times, take a little bit more of undoing. This is the switch completely out now. Now it looks a bit of a mess now. Now this bit's down to me. This bit of soldering, I've managed to catch my soldering iron on it, taking it out, but these things happen now and again, so that's nothing to do. But the rest of it looks in a bit of rough shape as it happens. But this bit here is down to me as well, because I tried to get this cover off. I thought if I get this cover off, I may be able to clean this switch up inside, a bit of emery cloth and a bit of switch cleaner, something like that. Maybe I'll clean all the contacts up, but just could not get this off. So I thought, and there's the actual part number there, SDU3PE. So if you wanted to search for the actual switch, there you go. But yeah, going back to try and clean this up, I thought I'd try and clean it up. Couldn't get the cover off at all, so I thought the next thing is maybe to attack it, get an hole in it somewhere, just chip away a little bit, get some spray in there, try and clean it up and get it going. That, it's going to look, you know, get it going that way. It's going to look messy, but if we get it going, it's going to save getting a new switch and get the unit back into operation. But not the greatest way of doing it, I must admit, but could get you out of trouble maybe. But yeah, to no avail really. If I just show you another picture here, and I'll put that up on the screen as well, you may be able to see that down the bottom here, there's a little contact here and a little contact the other side. You can't really see the other one, but there's a little contact here. What basically happens when you push this switch in, this contact moves over and connects this contact and this contact up. It's kind of in that position at the moment, and it clicks over to like that, so it makes contact here. So this contact here, this contact here will be short circuit, and when you push the switch in, it pops back out again into the off position. Obviously this moves away. But no matter how I tried cleaning that, I used a screwdriver and managed to get a little bit of like a nail file in there as well to clean that contact, and even had a screwdriver and pushed it in from this side, trying to clean this contact, scraping against it as you would do if it had a bit of corrosion or rust on it. Same with the other side. There's a little, like I say, a little thing here. This does exactly the same as that one. They both go together. So when it's in the off position, they're both like that, and when it's in the on position, they both go like that. Try cleaning it all up, put it all back together, still no avail, still making that arcing noise, but it was worth a go. So now what we're going to do, we haven't got this switch, we've got something similar, and I haven't actually got the switch picture of it yet, but I'll show you that picture in a second. But here's a switch very, very similar to the one I've actually replaced. So what we're going to do this really. This is the one that I've kind of got, though mine's a black one, this is a white one, as you can see. Is that we can see the wires going here, and we're going to connect these wires exactly the same as this is our old switch. We're going to connect them up exactly the same to this new switch, but it hasn't got that little bit at the bottom here. It hasn't got that little extra switch down the bottom here where the black and white wire goes to. So we're not going to connect that up to this switch at all. We're going to get rid of that black and white wire, which I shall show you very shortly in the next part of the video, what I'm going to do to compensate for that. But let's just go back to my switch. Right, here's my switch. I've done one side, one of the poles. This is only a 2-pole switch, one pole this side, one pole the other side. No extra bit at the front or nothing like that. It's a little bit flatter and skinnier than the one I just showed you, this one here. But this one would be suffice, this one would be fine, something like that. But this is just a switch I managed to get out of another unit. It's a second-hand switch, so you know, maybe go a bit later on, but it's going to get us out of trouble for the moment. And you may be able to get a new one, like I say, pretty cheap, £7 or £8, something like that. But just wanted to put this video together. I can take this out and do it again at another stage. But that's one pole connected and the capacitor in place. If I just show you one other picture from the other side, as you can see, there's the capacitor in place, that pole connected. We've still got a couple of wires to connect up on this side, and that switch will be ready to go. And all we've got to do now is sort out what we're going to do with them two black wires, that black and that white wire, them two wires. What do they actually do, and how can we bypass it in this particular amplifier or receiver, shall we say. Right, so we've got two wires left over now from that switch, a black one and a white one. Now we just don't want to stick them anywhere. What do they actually do? Can we bypass them? Can we get away without them two wires? I.e., you know, if we haven't got the right switch for it, as we haven't in this case. So let's have a look at that switch a bit closer detail. This is it, it's switch 8. And it's got an A and a B, which is down here. So this is the main part, this is the mains part, this is the heavy duty part of that switch, this is the back part of that switch, the bigger part out of the two parts, and this is a 2-pole which connects up the live and the neutral through into the transformer of the amplifier. So they're the 2 poles. It connects both of them up at once. Now some switches would have just one pole where it just connect one of them up, the other one already be connected, but this is a 2-pole, connects both of them up at once. And it actually goes through to that little part of the circuit we did a little bit of capacitor changing the other day. That part there, if you want to look at that video, it's at the top now. And we've done a few capacitors down here, I think we changed as well, just to get rid of a little bit of mains ump, and it kind of got rid of the little bit of static kind of noise as well. But that may have been more of a fluke than anything else, I don't know. But it's still worth changing. And also, maybe I should have changed this rectifier as well. That's something I may do in the future. But anyway, going back to what this switch actually does, so we've got A and B here. Now, part C is a little bit at the front, and part C is up here with the red arrows up here. This is part C, and what's this basically doing? When the amplifier's off, part C is actually shorted out. This is showing you how the amplifier is in the off position, i.e. these are not making contact down here at all, they're in the off position, and there's the off position here, and it's basically shorting out the base of this transistor down to the emitter here, down to ground. So when that's shorted out, this transistor is not going to be working, it's going to be in the off position. When we switch the amplifier on, obviously these switches here go across and short out, i.e. some juice will come into the amplifier, and this switch here would move over. Now this will be in the off position. Even though the amplifier is turned on, this switch will actually be in the off position. So this wouldn't be shorted out. And without this shorted out, this capacitor would charge up. It's a 100 microfarad capacitor. It would charge up, just giving enough voltage to to turn this transistor on. About 0.65 volts I measured it at. This will turn this transistor on, and in due course finally turn these FETs on, which will let the input, so we've got a CD player running, the input will come through, it'll take a little while to charge up, a little bit of a delay, and finally let it through this FET, and the output will come out and go into the input of your amplifier. So basically it's a little bit of a delay. It's probably, you know, it's another way of maybe not having a relay in there to actually stop any output there. So yeah, so what they've done here is just use a little timing circuit kind of thing, using the capacitor to charge up. How long that takes to charge up to get 0.6 volts to turn that transistor on is the delay. So we could get away with it really, not connecting that at all. Them two wires, all it's basically doing is stopping this shorting out when the amplifier is in the off position. It stops shorting out the base and emitter and keeping that transistor off, and also making sure that capacitor has got no charge whatsoever, shorting that capacitor out. That's all fine. If we just want to turn the amplifier on, then turn it off. Then we're not going to turn it on for another 20 minutes or so maybe. But even so, I did measure this actually in the off position with, and this still, you know, if I didn't have that switch shorting out in the off position, without them two wires connected, this capacitor went down to about 0.1 of a volt and stayed there for absolutely ages. So it does take a while to drain. So yeah, so you're going to have a little bit of a charge on there. So when you first turn it on, it's going to be, that delay is going to be a little bit less without them two wires shorted out. Like I say, that's if you turn it on. I turn it on now like that. It's going to be fun. Turn it on, and then you turn it off, and you're going to leave it 20 minutes, half hour before you turn it on again, and you're probably going to be okay. But this here is for anyone that kind of turns it off. Turns it on, then turns it off, then decides to turn it back on again. And obviously this hasn't drained, this capacitor with them two wires connected, it would like short straight out. Without them two wires connected, it hasn't got enough time to drain, and it may be 0.3 of a volt, something like that. So it won't take too long, go from 0.3 to 0.65 and charge up again. So the delay in the signal will be a lot less than it would be if it was shorted out. So what we're going to do, now they use this kind of circuit as well, just worth mentioning maybe, that switch, that little bit at the front, that little part of the switch that's not normally on a switch, that would maybe be used in Marantz or Sanyo or other make receivers or amplifiers even, and that may, rather than going and doing something like this, it may actually control via, very similar, but rather than there be a transistor there may actually be a relay or something like that in the circuit. So that may be just used as a little delay in turning the relay on or something like that. Just worth mentioning. So you may get away with it doing something similar to what I'm doing here now in a Marantz or something like that if you can't get hold of that switch. But please don't ask me what to do with your receiver or amplifier, because there's so many different ones, and them Marantz ones down there in the manuals, they're all over the place, the circuit diagrams, and you have to stitch them all together. Going to be a nightmare. It takes half hour just to stitch them all together, let alone trying to figure out what's happening. Some can be quite rough, not just the Marantz's, but any amplifier receiver. So I don't want to spend all my time doing that, I'm afraid. It's something that you may want to get someone else to look at, or try and work it out for yourself if you're going to replace it with the wrong switch, shall we say. But always best to get the right switch. It's going to save a load of aggro, but if you're in a position where you can't get it or it's too expensive for what you're actually repairing, you may want to go along this track I'm using here today. So okay, so what we're going to do then, we're going to get rid of this switch, we're going to take it out of the circuit, but we still want a way of maybe shorting that, you know, draining this capacitor out. So what I'm going to do is a little bit of an experiment here. Let's just show you where this actually connects up to the board actually. There they are, they're the two wires that come out. I've took them out now, but a black wire come out of one and a white wire come out of the other, and went to the switch, which is around about, it was just here somewhere, the switch in it. So yeah, the wires would have went to the switch there. So I've took them wires out, and what I'm going to do, if we just go back to this diagram here, rather than having a switch, I'm going to have a little bleed resistor across here from the base to the emitter to ground, and just so it drains that capacitor, And it's going to drain it all the time basically, even though it's on, but it isn't, because it's going to continuously go round, so it's never actually going to drain it while it's on. But when we turn the amplifier off and there's no juice coming into the receiver, it's finally going to drain that capacitor down to 0, and hopefully going to do it fairly quick, not take too long about it. So a little bit of experimenting here, because as soon as we put a resistor across here and the base and the emitter, it's going to lower the voltage just a tad, and if we haven't got enough voltage here to turn this transistor on, then nothing's going to happen. So I had to do a little bit of experimenting, kind of guesswork really. I started off with a 14.7k resistor, and that pretty much wouldn't do anything, because as soon as I turned the amp on, it wasn't enough juice here, or say juice, wasn't enough voltage here, should I say, juice, to turn this transistor on and thus turn everything else into action. So I had to do a little bit of experiment. So 14.7 weren't no good. I kind of mucked around with a few others, and I kind of, here we go, this is a picture of me with them 2 contacts on the other side of the board, mucking around with a few resistors, and I finally got 2 14.7s, which come out to about, well, actually come out to about 29.2k, and that was round about enough for it to spring into action and also drain it down. You could fine tune it. I could have spent a lot longer time and maybe narrowed that down to 20k or 22, but I thought this was fair enough. This is doing the job. So this is theoretically what I'm doing now with the circuit. I've got rid of that switch and I've just placed in a 30k resistor you could go and get. Mine's 29.2 when I do them 14.7s together. 2 of them together comes to 29.2, but we'll call it 30k. That's a resistor you can get hold of quite easily. So I've shorted out that capacitor with a 30k resistor, so that stays on. So even when the amplifier's on, that resistor's in circuit, it won't get hot, nothing like that. It's only a 1/4 watt one I've used, two 1/4 watt ones, so 1/2 watt, because they're both in series, but you could get 1/2 watt resistor, 1/4 watt resistor, something like that. There's hardly anything there to make that get hot whatsoever. So that when the amplifier's on, that resistor's always in circuit still, and when the amplifier's off, obviously that resistor's still in circuit, but it's draining that capacitor down. It doesn't drain it down instantly, it's not like a snap decision, so we've still got to be careful. We don't want to be turning the amplifier on and off, on and off too fast, but if you're just turning it on, I had a little bit of an experiment, turned it off, left it a few seconds and turned it back on again. That was enough time to drain that down and pretty much run the amplifier as it would be if you had that switch and them 2 wires connected up to the proper switch. So that's what I've done here. It may be different if you're using a different amplifier, different circuit, or maybe it's being used across a relay or something like that, and maybe on a Marantz receiver or amplifier. You may have to experiment if you want to go along this route with that resistor and use the wrong switch, which still works fine. You know what I mean? I say it's the wrong switch, just want to emphasise that we're using the wrong switch, but it's still working as it should. So that's it. So what I'm going to do now is show you a little demonstration of me turning it on and off, basically. Right, so there you go. I replaced that switch with the wrong switch. Bit of a bodge job maybe some people would say, but it's got the unit up and running and it's working fine now. Now, always best to get the right part, actually the right transistor, the right replacement transistor, the right capacitor, the right resistor, all them kind of parts, get the correct one. In this case, like I said, at the time of doing it, I couldn't get one imported, and the one I could do was really about £40, but now I've seen one come up a little bit cheaper, about £20. I can always take that switch out and put that one in if I wished. But as I've done this video, I was in the process of doing it, and I told you I'm going to come and do a video replacing the wrong switch but still get the unit going. I thought I might as well continue with the video. It was silly just stopping it completely as I've gone through the time and effort of actually doing that. You may wonder where it is. It's over there where I've just done that little clip of me showing you in action. Anyway, I'll say thanks for watching, and I'll see you all soon.